Welcome to the Industry Boring Podcast. I'm Cullen Raichart, your host, and today we'll be covering almost anything related to cannabis.
Hey Jordan, how are you?
Hey Cullen, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. Welcome to the little podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
That's good. I'm happy that you are here. So why don't you start by telling everybody what your job title is?
I am a process and project manager here at GreenBroz.
That's awesome.
It very much is.
A company that dearly needs process, if I do say so myself.
Maybe just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I think that I just have a nice range of opportunity.
That's awesome. I like that. Yeah, good. So anyway, we talked yesterday a little bit about this, but I wanted to go over kind of the value of process and the impact of implementing process in the company. But like in a nutshell, like process is everything.
Yeah, process is absolutely everything. I think process is the tools to success. Process comes from, identifying what needs to happen, writing those steps down, and then executing and then standardizing. And I think the standardization point is when you write down what everyone's supposed to do and you hand it out to them, it gives them the outline of what their job is and what our job is and what needs to be completed.
Yeah. It takes out the ambiguity and gives you that consistency in your product.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. But you don't come from manufacturing. So here you are coming from outside and trying to implement process into an environment that you have no exposure to. Well, limited because you've been here a while now. So you have some exposure, but how is that? And how can you do that without having that kind of background?
It was definitely interesting getting, my toes in the water and kind of figuring out where this was going to go for me. Because like you said, I didn't really have a background and I didn't know what to look for. And that's what such a major part of process is identifying. And so really for me, it took time to kind of settle into the environment, start getting to know people and hearing feedback from others and kind of what we're doing and really just being nosy. And then from there, I don't need to know how to build one of our machines necessarily, but because someone can tell me how to build one of the machines. What I need to do is I need them to tell me how they're doing it, and then I need to analyze whether or not it's efficient. And efficiency comes from so many different categories. We're teaching a lot about 8 lean wastes, and that is all about efficiency. So I know what wasted motion is. I know what overprocessing is, and these are things that you can identify in everyday life. So I don't think me coming into manufacturing takes away the fact that I can identify where inefficiency lays and how I can coach that to other people.
Yeah, the whole concept of process is pretty simple. It's a recipe, right? That's all it is. If you want to make the same food the same way every time, you got to follow the recipe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we do. So putting the recipe in doesn't mean necessarily that you have to have a master's in manufacturing engineering. What it means is that you have to understand that the first step is the first step, and that's writing it down, right? And we talk about this all the time. Like, if you don't write it down, you can't change it.
Yeah, it's unknown.
Yeah.
It's theoretical if it's not written down.
Yeah, and you can't improve it, right? So how do you study it and improve it if somebody's doing it one way and another guy's doing it another way?
Absolutely.
It becomes difficult, yeah.
All of my processes start as chicken scratch in a notebook. It's literally just what I see on the table right in front of me. I scribble it down as fast as I can while it's happening. And then later I take it back to my station and I start typing it up. And once I start typing it up, that's where all the actual analyzation of where it comes from, And then once I'm typing, then you can kind of dive into I noticed that I wrote down this step. Why did we do that step? Can we adjust it? Can we kind of flex it around? But I wouldn't be able to review that if I hadn't written down what I was actively seeing at the time. I can't call upon that memory and refine that memory. You have to write it down. There has to be documentation.
It was so massive that just the documentation portion of it, I think I went through lean exercises with some major companies, and so they send everybody out to be black belts and stuff like that. So I kind of have exposure to that from the outside or top down kind of enforcement. But the other thing that we went through was also like an ISO 9000, and all of these things are this, they're not too dissimilar. I mean, these things are all about documenting. So while in the ISO process, you're documenting everything to the nth degree, roles and responsibilities and then process. And more in the lean, you're more focused on the process of what's happening in front of you. So anyway, but those are major undertakings that a lot of companies, go after, those certifications, and they're invaluable. I mean, you can't improve without it.
No, absolutely. As you said, right now we're going through all that certifications. I think I got an email today asking me for the needs of those. And, we look at this list and it's like, okay, engineers, I need drawings from you. I need bombs. I need manuals. I need, how do I set this up? And it's interesting because some of the stuff we don't already have, and you would look at it and you'd be like, oh, we should definitely have this component. Where is it?
Right.
And, that's just that's the opposite of process. That's them, being inventive and creative and, making this master machine and then knowing how to do it and knowing how to, hands-on teach people. But again, how do we refine that machine and really show people what that machine is without the proper documentation? You can still make something, but you can't, after the making, what do you do if there's no documentation?
Yeah, well, absolutely, right? Because as a manufacturer, we invent things around our manufacturing skills and our capabilities, right? We try not to go too far outside of that. But you still have to translate, the invented portion or piece, the piece of equipment, to a manufacturing, to that part of the company. So it has to transition from engineering. So yeah, it needs all the supporting documentation, the bombs, the drawings, and then, we do it here. We have an engineer goes out and builds a machine. That's the first thing by himself to see if it actually goes together. And then during the building process, you find so many things that you can change and make better, especially for manufacturing. But without having that basis or that step by step to translate, what do? So here's a stack of parts. Good luck.
Yeah, have fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever played with Legos before?
Yeah. Don't worry, they all fit together just one way.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. Yeah.
No, definitely.
It's funny.
It's interesting to ask artists, which translates into engineers, I think. How did you compose this? And if you ask any artist in performing industries, music and everything, they'll just give you a blank stare. Like, what do you mean? How did I compose this? How did I do it? This is my art. I just put it together and here it is and you're welcome.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in manufacturing, it doesn't work like that. You need all the steps.
You do. You absolutely do. And there's another side, or the follow-on side to that is, coming from where your background is in larger, corporate America, you see, you see very organized, structured company and still refining process. And they do it kind of through their whole system without naming names of the company. But what was the goal of all of that work that company was doing?
No, absolutely. The company that I worked for, super structured. And like you said, they had everything that we needed in place. Again, a recipe. Step 1, step 2, step 3, final product, 5. End of story. You do it the same way every time, every day. You do 2 at a time the same way. And so, how do you refine something that's already well established? I think it's just consistent feedback. The amount of times that we have to rearrange our setup to make it more efficient, I'm reaching too far for this ingredient. Can I bring it closer to me? You know what, this step right here, this doesn't make sense for the area that I'm working in. Can you rearrange this? It's just constant feedback and communication, and then keeping an open mind to this feedback. There shouldn't be strict rules in place that say, just because this is the way we've done it, doesn't mean it's the way that it has to be done. And I think even large corporations kind of get that now, and they're really becoming more receptive to feedback, I would say. And then it also just depends on your general manager, how flexible are they willing to be with you?
Well, sometimes they don't have the ability to be flexible, like you said, with the structure of the company. But, I find that the difficulty in kind of implementing all these things with people, they have a little bit of resistance, initially. They kind of kick back and they're like, why is this person telling me how to do my job and this kind of thing? But you have a really interesting way of dealing with people. and I find it very refreshing. And also, you seem to be able to get away with a lot more than other people would be able to get away with in how you communicate with people. What's your secret as far as getting people to get on board?
I think there's a couple secrets. Your approach, first of all, absolutely everything. So my recipe to getting things done is acknowledge my faults right off the bat. I don't know the industry. So a lot of the times a struggle I would think would be is, why is someone that doesn't know about my job giving me direction?
Yeah.
So typically when I approach someone, I go, hey, you know what? I would try to do this, but I'd probably just break your tool. So could you, tell me about this, or could you potentially, try this for me? And that usually kind of disarms people. It makes them laugh a little bit, like, Jorden doesn't know how to do my job. You're right, I don't.
Right.
And then I would say, watching out for egos. Everyone has pride, and you really don't want to come off with an assumption that you know something better than the person you're working with. You really want to come into this as, I'm entering your space. This is something that you do every day and I don't. So I'm here for your knowledge, but I also have something to share with you. And once you can get past that ego and kind of build a more friendly relationship, people are a lot more willing to work with you. And just consistently building those relationships and fostering them. Obviously you're in a professional environment, so you don't want to expand on that too much, but I want to know how you're doing. Like, how's your day going? What are you frustrated with? They'll be like, oh, this thing happened here and I'm frustrated about it. I'm like, well, let's check it out. Tell me about it. Like, can I help you? What do you need for assistance? Do you need someone else to help you? I listen to them. I hear what they're saying, and then they see me try. Even if I don't succeed, I at least give my best effort to assist where possible. Right.
When I started doing, 4 years ago, we had just massive quality issues and massive problems, and production was down, and the whole kind of atmosphere had fallen, and quality had just gone to shit, to be honest. I mean, we were struggling with remakes, and I started getting on the lean kick, and I spent half an hour, 45 minutes every day in front of the whole team, and just talking about waste, talking about identifying problems, talking about how to smooth things out, talking about process, talking about how to identify wins, and rewarding people for their wins. And we started, it took a while, but just that daily, like literally me sitting in front of my whole assembly team daily, the whole team, even engineering, everybody, and just talking and reiterating and kind of beating it into the consciousness. You're right. So, but that started to create that buy-in, and we started to get people that really kind of got into it, and we started to see real improvement. And that was the first hack at process. And we have a bunch of SOPs and stuff that we made, and which are amazing. I mean, an SOP is just like the ultimate process document.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what it's all about. But we did simple stuff. I mean, we just do pictures and one sentence stuff, right?
That's
so
all
simple.
It needs to be.
Yeah, it's all it needs to be. Exactly. So that was where we're at. We finally got that kind of jammed, and then of course we moved the company out to Vegas, and all the people that were trained didn't come, and so it kind of started all over again. And same problems. You start running, and you're creating this throughput. You're just trying to get things done, and all the new people. It's hard to start without having that strength of all the documentation in place. And that was a major challenge, and that's really what led to me finding you. Was just again, like, it's not that it can be done to a certain point without it, but you run into a wall where you just can't get better without having all that process and documentation in place, and that consciousness for the team. But the buy-in and getting them to get involved, it's another challenge altogether.
No, it absolutely is. I think, and the buy-in is so important. It's vital to have your workers see what you're doing and grasp onto that and like live it. And it creates a culture. And I think culture is a lot of times the motives behind people's actions. And so, here we are again. We're doing 20-minute videos in the morning. We're drilling in lean manufacturing. And at first, I was totally getting the reaction from all these new people of, why am I wasting 20 minutes out of my day to come watch YouTube videos with Jorden? Yeah. And they're like, when I could go over to my machine and do all the work that needs to be done. And I was like, just wait, guys. Eventually you'll get it. Eventually it'll sit. And then, I think we did 3 weeks straight of videos, and then I was giving them like worksheets, like 8 lean wastes. I was like, this is your worksheet, and I need you in your station to identify at least one of each waste.
Right.
And then I need you to fix that. And we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to come sit in your station, and I'm going to evaluate how you work. And I'm going to identify waste. And once we opened up that conversation and they had to start critically thinking about this worksheet and what in their station is waste, that's when the ideas started pumping. And they were like, okay, now I see why we've been watching these videos. Now I know that, I can move all this stuff over here. Or, I don't use this piece of, material right here. I can get rid of it. It's useless. It's dirty. And then they started coming to me with ideas like, Jorden, my storage is just not good. What do you think we could do to improve this? Because it's, it's causing motion A, B, and C. And that was such a success for me to see, for people to start critically thinking about their areas and then taking ownership over their areas and being like, this is my space. My space needs to be comfortable for me to work, and it needs to be efficient for me to work. So I'm going to make it my space, and I'm going to own that. Huge win. And now it's slowly but surely flipping around. I mean, we're seeing huge differences here.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think it's slow. I think it's pretty rapid. But I mean, that's how it kind of implements, and that's how it was the last time I went through it. It's just like, it feels like the initial kickoff is difficult, but the changes are rapid and immediate, And then you look at, like, how would we, as a company, double our production? Right? Mm-hmm. What's the formula for that? And without that process, and understanding all that stuff, it's really difficult to make that, to know what that would be, right? You can't just double your shifts. You have to understand the impact of all these different things you're doing, and then you would double some places and not in others, because you would understand, right? But the biggest challenge, I think, in any chaotic environment like ours is that initial push just to get people to get rolling. But the benefits, once they see them, I mean, everybody gets on board. Everybody's like,
oh yeah. Once they realize that we're making their job easier and that there's less room to make a mistake, then they get it. Then they're like, oh, I can just come to work, clock in, do my stuff, do it easily without conflict, and I can get out. And I think that's what we all want from our job. We don't want to be putting out fires all the time.
Right.
It's
exhausting, right? And then your mental space is whacked way out of place. And, I find that to be one of the more challenging things. When you've got very talented people, they tend to be problem solvers, right? Mm-hmm. And then they solve a problem and they kind of hold on to that knowledge, right? And they may tell somebody else how to solve the problem, but you don't necessarily get to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So like the story I'm embarrassingly tell every time is we had one place where we put these cords or plugs on our motors, and then they would take them over to the builders, and the builders would put them in the machines. Well, the builders were cutting the cords, the plugs off the motors because they didn't fit through the hole in the plastic that was the front panel of the machine. Yeah. And no one knew. It's just what they did.
Yeah. I feel like this is how we've been doing it.
Yeah. Right. Forever. And I walk out and I watch it. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, that's how we do it. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, that's how I was taught. I don't, time out.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
Like,
Who taught you that? Well, that's how everybody knows. Everybody does it. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that everybody does it. Why? And the hole's too small. Well, I can fix that for you. Like, if you would have just brought that information back, right, we could go to engineering or wherever we have to go to make that adjustment, and then all of a sudden that's solved. But instead we have, a very inappropriate but effective solution in the cutting off of a cord, which is doubling, is waste. It's just nothing but that's
You're
the
putting
epitome
the
of
cord
waste.
on, and then it goes over there, and then they take it off and they put it back on again.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah, why just do it, not do it from the beginning anyway? But that happens a lot, and you find people who are very, like I said, they're very talented and they're very good at their jobs, and you go, oh, this is a really good kind of problem solving guy, but he's not necessarily looking outside of his box.
Yeah.
Right? And he doesn't, if without a process, he doesn't know that what he's solving is wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? So he doesn't have the steps. So he stepped outside of the boundaries of what he was taught. He found a solution, which is great, but we're not solving the problem, and the problem persists.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he's sick, everything is down, and like, I don't know, these things don't work anymore. No one knows how to put this machine together. I mean, we suffered through that here with the sorters, and it was just a massive struggle. I had one guy that was like, well, if you do it this way, you have to kind of finagle and this, and I'm like, why aren't we doing any of that? I mean, let's get an engineer over here and have him see why. And it turns out we had a hole that was just off by a little bit. I mean, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 1,000 holes in that machine, and one of them's off a little bit, and the whole machine has to be kind of monkeyed together, And what we found was that that simple adjustment, again, go back into engineers, and then the engineers have to chase that trail of paper all the way through the system again.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they're solving something for themselves, like you said, but they're not thinking outside of their immediate problem. They're not thinking about the problem as a whole. When it really is so easy to fix, you just got to go to the source.
Right.
I go to the source for everything, but someone tells me a problem, I'm like, who told you? Yeah. I go to that person, I'm like, who told you? And then 5 people later, I'm there. Yeah. And I'm like, why? But I think that's a really good point, because something that we're developing with this culture of lean and bringing things up is trusting. A lot of the times people will take it into themselves to solve a problem. Yeah. And they'll be like, hey, I did my job. I'm contributing to my team because I solved this problem. And that's great. But did they trust to bring it to the next level to see if there was a better resolution?
Right.
So many times, in my previous experience, people will find a problem and they'll, make their own kind of solution for it. And I'll ask them, I'm like, did you tell like your leader about that? And they're like, no, they're not going to do anything. It's like, well, they're definitely not going to do anything if you didn't tell them. Right. I was like, you just eliminated all the chances of them doing 100%
something
by keeping your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I brought this problem to them before and they didn't fix it. I was like, did you ask them why? I was like, this problem is totally different from this problem. You could have absolutely had a solution. And so that, going back to what I was saying earlier, when people have an issue, I at least give it my best shot. And then I'll explain to them if I couldn't do it and what action we're taking to resolve it. And then what I'm doing by that is building their trust that I'm going to take action.
Right, that they have valuable input and that they're going to be listened to. And it's sometimes it's difficult. I find that difficult because with an engineering mindset, and I see things the way I see them, and that of course it's always right, because that's what engineering is, always right. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, but a guy will come to me and be like, "Hey, what about this idea right here, man? I was thinking and it sometimes it's the most outlandish, craziest thing you've ever heard of in your life. And I've had I just have to take a second and just say, okay, listen, tell myself, relax, accept the input, right? Acknowledge it, like, hey, you know what, I'll think about it. We'll look at it. I'm not going to say no. Yeah. I might go away and go, God, that was fucking crazy. I'm not going to do that.
Exactly. Like, I don't know what that guy
was thinking about. But on the other hand, he could turn around the next day and throw something out you that you're like, holy crap.
You're like, it's genius.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Why wouldn't, and those kind of things. So if I'm not being cognizant and listening, when the idea is maybe not fitting in with my ideas, then I shut them out, and then I shut them out for this other potential gain. And that's where you want to be. I think that's what you want to avoid when you're dealing with people, because everybody sees it a little bit differently, man. We're all looking at the same thing from different places,
different angles, for sure. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have, and a lot of the times, especially if an engineer, they're like, I have all this experience, I have all this knowledge, and now this labor worker is giving me advice. Like, who are they? Who are they to tell me what I'm doing? And I think that's just, making, again, like you said, cognitive change and kind of stopping yourself and slowing down. For me, a lot of the time, that conversation looks like, you know what? If it's like totally outlandish and I know I'm not going to execute it, I'll be like, hey, I totally see where you're coming from. Here are 3 reasons why I don't think it would work. What are your thoughts on that? And I'll give them a chance to be like, well, we could try it like this, give a few options. I'll kind of rebuttal back and forth with them. I call it a rumble. And so we'll rumble about it. And eventually they'll kind of see where they're going wrong. But if they're persistent, then I'll be like, hey, go ahead, give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
When it doesn't work, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes that's not a bad thing, at least they get to see for themselves that they were
I think
wrong.
people just want to understand,
Yeah, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people just want to feel important.
Yeah, and then there's that. So then sometimes,
which is fine.
They want to be validated.
Yeah,
as we
just
all
validate,
do.
Right? Just a little bit of a recognition that they're actually here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very interesting. I find that right now in this culture that there's a big shift in how communication with people is more about validating them and validating their them as people and as valuable assets, and not so much as labor, in general terms, and not the down, constant beating and being denigrated and kind of yelled at and told to perform.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, we've talked about this before when back in the day you would have a job and you would know what your expectations were, and if you didn't fill those expectations, or like you didn't show up to work one day, that's fine. We have 10 other people that can replace you right now. We don't even need you. You're expendable is what you're told.
Right. Right.
And you're totally right how that culture is changing now, and it's more that you're working with human beings, and this human didn't come into work today because they had to go to the ER, and you got to take that into consideration. Now it's you can't just be like, you're being written up because you didn't show up to work today. And they're like, well, I was in the emergency room, and you're like, I don't care, sorry. You should have brought you and your broken leg straight to work. I
got to prove that one to me, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When along that same line, I mean, there's that whole community. We talked about this the other day too. That whole communication thing where you're, as you move up the chain in responsibility, which is management or leadership or whatever that is, as you move up that chain, that responsibility of communication becomes even more heavy, if you will. And I've seen this a lot where we'll take a guy that's a superstar, like a solid performer, works really well, maybe works well with others, and around, loves his machine, loves his equipment, nails it, and you're like, oh, this guy's perfect.
Yep.
Right? And then you go, okay, this is going to make a perfect
leader,
right? No, not necessarily.
Nope.
So.
Very rarely the case, actually.
Yeah, right? Isn't that funny?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, you can have excellent performers, and like you said, people can be passionate about their work and totally excel in what they're doing right then and there. But as you've said before, it's unfortunate that the only way up for them is through management, because just not everyone possesses that skill, and so much of that skill is proper communication. I could be an excellent sander, or a welder, and I could just do everything, and I could even teach someone to do what I'm doing, and I could take them under my wing. But can I go up to a floor of 20 people, and can I deliver them the tasks for the day? And then when they struggle with those tasks, can I go over there and can I coach them, and can I teach them how to do the task the way that it's supposed to be implemented? And can I do it calmly, without degrading or making people feel bad that, they need to ask for help? That's what leadership is. It's delegation, and it's teaching, and it's coaching, and it's being patient with your team and wanting to develop a better team. Yeah,
and I think a big part of that is managing the your expectation of others.
Yeah.
When you're at when I'm hiring, I'm looking for people at a specific level or above that level, right? But when you're working with people and you're bringing them up inside, you're kind of hoping that they have some of these talents, and that you can bring them up to that level, and not everybody does. And then as a new manager, you're looking out at people, and if you were brought up as a performer, you're going, why isn't that guy doing that job as good as I did that job?
Yeah.
Like, I would never slack like that guy. He's such a slacker. But that's an unreal expectation of somebody else's performance. So you have to recognize kind of where people are, and then say, well, is this, they may not be the right guy. That's not necessarily the answer that they are or aren't, but they have a limit, and it's where is that limit and where do they work well? And then, being comfortable with that and seeing if you can make it better.
Absolutely.
But not beating them up because they're not as good at it as you were.
And that's just it. How many times, for me in school, I've told you that I'm awful at math. I just cannot. And I remember in 10th grade, I had this awful teacher, and she told me that I was going to fail, and I should drop out of her class. And I was like, absolutely not. I will not drop out of your class, and you're my teacher, and you're going to teach me how. And she was like, no, I'm not going to help you. She's like, you're going to fail. And it was her student teacher that sat with me every day at lunch and, coached me up. And thanks to him, for only like 2 months of support, 2 months straight of like straight math coaching, I passed her class, but it wasn't anything that my teacher did for me. It was someone that was below her that was also learning, that took that time. And she didn't look at me as an individual. She said, I see you. I don't think you can do it, and I'm not going to help you succeed. And I wish she would have changed her expectations of me. I wish she would have saw my potential to grow and taken that time to grow.
Sure.
And you set people up for failure when you give them unattainable expectations.
Absolutely. And I think that happens a lot when you're promoting people up that ladder, because it seems like that should be a natural extension, right? If you've ever been in management or you've been in leadership, it seems like there should be some natural extension. I mean, you evaluate people on their performance and you go, well, those are the things I like, that energy, that intensity, right? I want to bring that over here. But if the skills aren't there, you're wasting a guy.
Absolutely.
You're actually killing them. They're gonna be put off somewhere at some point. You're gonna have to shove them over into a corner because they're not any good at the job you moved them into. It's horrible.
And I mean, that's frustrating for them too, because they're like, I used to be good at my job. I used to ace it, and then to be put in a position.
Go home every day and work hard.
And now they're sitting here and they're like, I have no idea how to manage my team. And I just want to go do my one job really well and prove to them that I'm valuable. But that's not where they are anymore.
Yeah, and you can't really go backwards, right? Because you've backfilled and stuff like that. And I think my biggest lesson there was, I went through in corporate America, I was a performer. I did, I set some really cool examples and did some really good stuff as a performer, and management opened up, and it seemed like the logical jump. And I got there, and man, I just got run over. My first week, I was the executioner because we had a big layoff in the company.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I had to walk people down the hallway and to the big boss, and be like, "Hey, you have an appointment with Ron," and they look at me like, "What?"
Give him a nice
Ron?
little head nod.
Yeah, no, come on, you got to go with me. Just walk them back and give them a box and take their stuff and walk them out. Don't worry, it's gonna be okay, man. And you're just like, fuck.
I mean, that's the company setting you up to be like the evil boss. Like nobody's gonna want to get to know you after that.
Yeah. No, that was it. So, but that was my first exposure. But then after that, it was still, for me, it was just the things that I needed to do and provide and perform to were just so far outside of my skill set that it just didn't fit with me at all. Yeah. And I mean, thankfully, I got out of corporate because, I wasn't going to go anywhere.
Well, and that's just what it is for some people. Some people don't have that skill set, and that's just not their path, and that's totally okay. You don't have to be a manager. There's so many other ways that you can, grow. Unfortunately, not in corporate. Management is the way up, but
which is weird because there is leadership.
Yeah.
Right, and leadership and management aren't the same thing. But there's this really mixed idea that you're a leader, you're a manager.
No.
Some of the skills cross a little bit, and you have to have some of both.
You need to be able to motivate people. That's a shared skill between them. But
that's But I mean, really, the skills are very different, and the talents there are very different. And I find, in leadership, I'm very comfortable. I'm vibrant, I'm alive, I'm excited. This is what I love. I love this company. I love this manufacturing. I love doing this stuff. I can impart that intensity and passion to people. I can motivate and stuff, but that's not management. Like I hire people that
to
are
manage.
fucking masterful at it,
Yes.
right? And I'm like, look at all this work, look at this structure, look at what this person is doing. That's magic.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I mean, to be a leader, to set it aside from management and everything, you are providing the people with a direction. You're making the tough calls and you're motivating people to, follow this direction and take the leaps and bounds. You're really, you're the flag bearer, come this way. Whereas a manager, they have a job and, their job is to make an execution happen.
Yeah.
How do you have a team execute this step? And that could be written out and given to a manager, and a manager can execute that based off of like an SOP. You still have to have, admirable qualities that, some leadership would have. Again, like motivating people, communication, all very important. But you're not necessarily making those tough directional calls. You're not the flag bearer. You're not showing bringing the people to a new direction or new beginnings. You're saying, this is the job. We're going to do the job.
It's the captain of the ship doesn't touch the steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good analogy.
He just doesn't. That's not his job. But, if that ship goes aground, guess whose fault it is? Yeah. So it's like, it's a really, but that's, as you move up, it's so interesting, I think, to find that's, even at whatever level, that starting to delegate, starting to understand multiple tasks working together, multiple things coming together. How do all these things come together to make this whole thing function, right? That's just a completely different picture than being really good as a producer.
Absolutely.
And those are things that I think, I don't know. I've worked for a lot of companies. I've never been in a company that teaches that well. I'm pretty sure that we don't teach it well. I'd like to.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so difficult.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. We got a long way to go.
That's okay. I have the secrets, maybe. But no, for me, training management, I always find that the best thing you can do to train someone for management is to make them a trainer, and then identify that your training capacities involve coaching the entire team, not just like a new person. You're looking out for observations and, things that you can do to, make your teammates better. And you put someone in this training position and you get them to start kind of doing your dirty work for you. For me, if I'm a manager and I have a trainer and I see someone doing something wrong, I'm going to grab my trainer in training. And I'm going to be like, hey, could you go let your teammate know that he's doing this differently? Here's how I suggest you approach it, set them up for success. Right. But can you go have this conversation with them? And I remember my managers doing this to me, and I was so nervous because I'm just small and I'm young, and so I go up to in my experience, I go up to this tenured partner who's doing something wrong, and I go, "Hi, Kate. I noticed that you were doing something like this, and it is outside of the operational standard. Could I do it for you, or do you have any questions?" And she goes, "Oh. Yeah, I knew I was doing it wrong." She's like, "I didn't think anyone was going to say anything, though." She's like, "But yeah, I guess I'll do it right. Thanks, Jorden." I was like, "Okay, I'll just head back over to my corner now."
Yeah.
But it wasn't even a big deal. But that was how my manager forced me to get into coaching people and kind of navigate that. And I think that's the best way for us to have our team members also do it.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. I guess you have a job.
Yeah.
A new job?
A new job? All right, I'll start writing the training book.
start writing the training manuals today.
Get right on that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think that's fun. That is fun stuff to watch people grow and actually do well, and I always enjoy that. It's frustrating to watch people fail and have expectations and to see them fail and struggle and then not really know exactly what it is that you're going to do. Some people you can help them get through, and some people just get kind of run over. I mean, it happens at every level.
Absolutely.
I've had people, who did wonderful things for the company, and then were just outgrown. And as you watch them kind of get run over by the circumstances and just the kind of the bigness of the job now that it's become, and you're trying to communicate like direction and like we're going this way. This is where we're going, and I need you to kind of go. This is the way you need to go. And
I feel like I'm forging the path for you.
Yeah. I'm helping. I'm being really clear here. We're gonna do this, and this, and then and to watch them fall off because they really can't connect to that, and you know, but that happens, and then that ultimately what happens to somebody like that is they get replaced, or you know, you find somebody that's got more tenure, somebody that's got you know, got the skill set to get through the things that you're facing, because as the company grows, the things you face are always different.
Absolutely.
You know, so
it's changing.
Yeah, it's changing, and that happens to people. They get run over. I call it getting run over, but I find that to be very. Because it is. It's like you watch it and you see them. They get the deer in the headlights, and then they become very ineffective, and then you've gone so far beyond their skill set. By the time I'm slow, so by the time I make the decision to move on, you know, it's like, oh man, I should have done that a year ago. Yeah, should have done that. You know, but you know, I'm always thinking like, you know, this is a person that needs an opportunity. The thing is, like, you know, where I am in my position, I don't know these other positions. Like, I don't know what it is to be a director of sales, a director of marketing, a director of operations. Yeah. I don't know that.
You hire someone to know that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if they don't know if they're not performing, I mean, I can see the fruit of the failure, but I mean, I don't know how to implement or go do their job, but I know where I want to go. So I try and tell them this, you know, try and guide them. But if they can't perform,
then that's not what you're looking for.
Then I need somebody else.
Yeah, and that's just it. And I think that's I think, you know, you mentioned that sometimes it takes a long time to get to that point of replacement, but I also think it's so sad to see your star performer that, you know, does so well, just crush it, and then to just slowly watch them fail. I mean, that's also hard for leaders to let go of, because ultimately you do care that that person at one point was amazing at what they did. Yeah. And now it is just too far gone, and it is a hard call to be like, I'm sorry, this isn't working out for you. Yeah. I can't show you how to do the job. I can't make you fit the job the way that you're doing it. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to go in another direction, and that's just how it is.
It is, and sometimes, you know, and like you said, it is difficult. I think I've had one person that I've moved back, right? Because I moved him into leadership, and he just, you know, was obviously not cut out and for it really, and he just wasn't picking up the needs, right? And I just said, well, dude, this is my choice right now. I mean, I haven't replaced you here, so I can put you back, or, you know, I can let you go and find somebody else. And he said, I can go back to my other job? I'm like, yeah. He goes, good, I'll do that.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
Whoa. I'm like,
that's a rare reaction,
yeah, right.
though.
That's
People
very,
don't do that very often.
Everybody, yeah, because most of the time it's like, I can't go back. I'd be embarrassed. Oh, people will laugh at me.
They'll know that I failed.
Yeah. It's like, well.
Well, they also know that you're not doing good, so.
Yeah. Everybody understands you're failing because they're working in the situation, so everybody knows. But
I also don't think there should be any shame in going back. Like, if you try something out and you gave it your best shot, and ultimately it didn't work for you, then go do that thing that you were super awesome at. And, you know, don't listen to the people that are going to be like, oh, he failed. Because now you're in a spot where you're excelling, you're contributing to the company, and you probably also feel better about yourself. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, people sometimes a lot of times people get caught on, you know, the title. Yeah. Right, the upgrade, right? And how this has, like, they've imagined themselves to be like, oh, I'm going to be a manager. You know, I just think that, you know, that's very dangerous.
Absolutely.
You know, but because it's fantasy, sometimes the fantasy is founded on good things, and maybe you have some talents in that arena, but a lot of times it's on a misperception of what that other person's job is.
Absolutely.
You see somebody sitting there at their computer all day and like, well, they just fuck off all day. They don't do anything.
I could write emails.
I could write emails. I'm good at email, you know?
I have the best professional email tone.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Oh, no, you're totally right. I don't know. I think it definitely hits people in the heart when they do have that fantasy. And I think we've all been there where we envision ourselves doing something or being a certain position, and, you know, it either just doesn't pan out, or the way that it does pan out is not what you wanted at all. And how do you accept that? You know, you just put so much pressure on this image that you've created. And it sucks. I like to hope for the best and expect the worst. And that's I don't know, it sounds cynical, but it keeps me going. Keeps you grounded.
Yeah, you got that right. Yeah, it's very true. I for a long time, we didn't do titles and just in the company because I really don't believe in them. I believe in positions, and that's how I feel about it. I think titles carry a false sense of importance, and but some people are very, very attached to it, and so I've let people like give themselves their own title, and then it's when it comes down to it, you're like, well, okay, according to your title, you should be performing here, and this is what someone who does this job does, and they're like, oh, yeah, so you sure you want that title?
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You lock in? It's funny you say that, though. I would say half your employees in the office do not know what my title is. I've had people walk by and they'll be like, oh, yeah, this is Jorden. She manages. She does some management. I'm like, you're right. That is correct. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what my title is.
No, because right.
We're also executing, and I think the execution is
the key.
What matters, and I'm executing what is applicable to my title, which is process and project management. Yeah. As far as it looks like to everyone out there, I'm managing the projects, I'm managing the processes.
That's right.
And that's what it comes down to.
And that's what's being done, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I horribly embarrassed one of my engineers at one point, a young man who used to work for me, by saying, hey, I was having a conversation and I was saying, like just out of like, in a kind of, not in a kind of like friendly kind of manner, like, hey, this is my floor guy. He does. Yeah. And he was just mortified that he was my floor guy.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
But because I'm trying to find the title of a manufacturing engineer, because it's not in my brain space. And, it was my floor guy. And I remember that because he was just like, so disrespected and just a floor guy to you. Yeah. Well,
sounds like a girlfriend.
Now he's somebody else's floor guy.
Yeah, he's someone else's floor guy. No, that's right. I think titles, people hold them near and dear to their heart. But I think, like you said, at the end of the day, what matters is your work and the ethic that you're putting down on the table. Yeah. And I think when you work hard and people can see it, I think that outweighs the value of your title by a tenfold.
Easily.
If people know that you can do your job and you do it well, it doesn't matter what they call you.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think sometimes there's some intercompany communication that requires, some people won't talk to anybody unless they're at X level. I mean, okay, I get it.
That's how you want to work.
I mean, I generally don't put salespeople on my LinkedIn because I just don't want to get a bunch of people trying to sell me stuff.
Makes sense.
That's so bad. Now everybody knows my secret.
I know. They're going to get, all the sales managers are going to hear this podcast and they're going to start requesting you to connect.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't get any good friends anymore. my friend space on LinkedIn. But anyway, well, listen, I mean, it's always a pleasure. We have such a good time. We spend every day talking about this kind of stuff, so geeking out on it. So it's always good. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Happy to chat.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining. That concludes our podcast for this week. Don't forget to check us out on all the socials at GreenBroz.